let's do this. Okay, so the thing I want to do next, I want to talk about Legion Season 2. I've been watching this show called Legion, and I love it to death. It's one of my favorite things on television. And just briefly, Season 2 just ended, and I'm going to talk about it, and this is going to be very spoiler-rich. If you haven't seen it and you don't want it spoiled, don't watch this video, because I'm just going to talk about spoilers. I'm not going to hold my tongue. I have too much to say. There's too much to go over here. I can't pick and choose. Going through this, Legion Season 2, followed up by following Legion Season 1. Initial thoughts are, one, the show is very surreal. I love the surrealism. It's like a superhero version of Twin Peaks, kinda, sorta, not really. If I were to, a couple times throughout this Season 2 of Legion, I was thinking, this is Doom Patrol. This reminded me of the Morrison era, the really weird era of Doom Patrol, the DC comic, where you just had the weirdest damn shit that was often not explained. It's like, look, here's a weird-ass thing that's happening for reasons. It doesn't matter. It's not even explained. It's just a thing that happens, and just deal with it. It's just part of the background. For this show, I think it's more purposeful. The weirdness in this show is kind of to remove the viewer from their safety zones, their comfort zones, as it were. It's like, this is the world as seen by David Haller, aka Legion. So we see a world where there's a lot of surreal imagery. It's not clear what damn year it is. I mean, we're constantly seeing imagery from the 60s, 70s. We saw when the Carries were young, there was the Banana Split song. So it's like, and Carrie's kind of old. So what year is any of this stuff happening in? Not clear, and I think that's purposeful. A lot of the weirdness, I think, is to be off-putting, to kind of make the audience think that there is no solid ground, that they don't know what's real and what's not, to kind of be mistrustful of what they see around them. And that was very clever and very appropriate for this genre, for this particular show, which is not a superhero show. At no point have I seen anyone even remotely wear like a superhero costume, or even pick a superhero name. I mean, the mutants are Oliver, Carrie and Carrie, Sid, David, Farouk. Farouk is the closest we get with the Shadow King. Even then, it's more like that character is just kind of a reminder, kind of a hook for people more familiar with the comics, particularly the X-Men comics. It's like, kind of to reel them in a little bit, like, hey, there's some stuff from the comics in here. And then you get in, and there's virtually nothing from the comics. In this season, the Shadow King was mighty damn cool, although he was only cool for, I'd say, about half the season. Prior to that, he's always depicted as wearing someone else as a mask, either Lenny or a dog or the yellow-eyed devil or something. He's actually someone or something else. And so we only see him as Farouk, as the real Shadow King, as himself, for like half the season. And thus we start to get into my, not complaints, let's say criticisms. I understand why there are a couple places, God, this is so involved. There are a couple places where the show is a little disjointed, where we have these scenes that we have little arcs that don't really go anywhere. There's the scenes where, this is spoiler-ridden, so I can be specific. The entire thing with the things hatching out of the eggs and making people crazy, or the weird disease where everyone's like teeth chattering. They just kind of end. They don't really amount to anything. It's just sort of, here's this weird thing happening, and it just sort of stops being a thing. Like, David or someone just solves the problem, or the problem just goes away. Oh, and likewise, features just come and go kind of at random. Like, at one point, there are a whole bunch of children being guards in Section 3, and then there aren't. I guess the in-story explanation for that might be they're not needed anymore. The explanation for them is that whatever the weird disease is doesn't seem to work on children, so we have children guards. Then the disease just vanishes suddenly. Like, everyone literally just stops having it. It just stops being a problem immediately like that. And I kind of get why these arcs might be happening. It's kind of as a bit of misdirection. It's like you think this is involved with the main story arc, it turns out it's not. And it's sort of to get you thinking, like, wow, there's a lot of balls being juggled here, a lot of juggling pins, whatever. And then it's like, no, there was a main story arc, and this was just a distraction to it. Which is fine, because they were interesting, but at the same time, it felt a little unsatisfying. It's like, here's this cool thing, and it's just like, it's over. I mean, nothing feels like it. Not nothing. Let's be clear. There are a couple elements that just didn't feel like they had a clear purpose in this season. In that kind of, in hindsight, I didn't like. And while it was happening, I was very satisfied. It's like, give me more weirdness. And the last, I think, 4 episodes did not disappoint in that respect. It's extremely weird, with lots of weirdness going on constantly. I mean, it was really the moment where there's a bunch of guys, not explained at all, just standing around the hole in the middle of the desert, while there's a giant bathtub plug off to the side and a giant chain leading off of it. And there's a bunch of guys kind of meditating, but they're wearing safes, like an old-timey, this is where we keep the bank money safe, over each of their heads with a little slot cut in it so they can see out, I guess, and breathe. Not explained, and at some point the safes are just sitting there discarded. And it's like, what is the deal here? And I'm perfectly fine with not knowing. It's just a mysterious thing that you can speculate, well, maybe Farouk made them and that was a distraction, or maybe they're a side effect, or maybe there are these weird guys that are there for some reason, but they aren't really related to the story as much. It's not really explained, and it doesn't need to be. It's perfectly fine with it just being a weird atmospheric element. I liked very much the episode that seemed totally disconnected with the rest of it, where here's David in alternate continuities. Here's how things might have been. I wish that episode were more meaningful. Like it led to something. Like the alternate universe thing kind of went somewhere. Like it had some impact. And that's kind of my complaint, is that there's too much that felt like it had no impact. Like it didn't really, at the end of the day, do anything. It was just some random thing that happened. And that's given me like Last Jedi flashbacks. I'm way less, dear God, after that movie, The Last Jedi, I am way less forgiving of unsatisfying story arcs. That movie has had impacts for me that go far beyond Star Wars. But, so, I mean, like, and maybe it still will. Like the episode with the alternate universe thing, maybe, I mean, we're seeing these fragments of David's personality. Are they fragments of David's personality? Can he reach out and maybe these are literally different versions of himself pulled from alternate universes? Or, I mean, do each of these guys, or are they just fragments of his personality, a dissociative personality disorder? We finally getting the Legion in Legion at the end of this episode, at the end of this season. In the last I guess it was just the last 2 episodes. We had hints and such prior to that with little bits of, like, David will be talking to someone or thinking about something, and you'll hear an alternate David voice, and and he'll talk back to it a little bit, but it's just like a really brief scene. In this, it's like an extended. We actually see multiple Davids inside his head. As far as the ending itself, I'm not sure where Hawley. No, what's his name? The showrunner guy, Noah Hawley, I think is his name. I'm not sure where he's going with this. Like, he says this is a tragedy. Okay, so which makes me think that David and Sid are not going to get back together, that he's just going to be really, really crazy. It did occur to me, my random thoughts now. I mean, I'm kind of all over the place with this, but random thoughts. One is, and this is speculation on me, is like maybe they kind of predicted the end of the world and what will make David turn, and like maybe they, in trying to avoid that very thing, they created that thing. Like maybe that courtroom scene at the very end is the thing that makes David turn. All the people he knows and trusts telling him he's the bad guy. Maybe he goes, well, maybe they're right. And it's like, we saw Farouk. That's what was kind of a bummer about this whole thing. There wasn't that victory. There was no victory in this. I mean, it ended on such a bummer, and that's fine. And it's fine for it to be a tragedy. But you can't have everything end on a bummer. And that was kind of my complaint. I mean, I love the weird musical scenes. I've gotten the impression that the reason for them is multifaceted. One is it's just a weird show with weird imagery, so when you have fight scenes and other stuff, you're going to go weirdness. The musical numbers, the singing mouse, the dance-off at one point, what's another one? The thing at the very end, the very beginning of the last episode, the musical number, Behind Blue Eyes by The Who, with cartoons that resemble, was that just me, that looked like Pink Floyd's The Wall. I got the impression that they do these, one, because it's weird imagery, like I said, but also because it's less expensive than trying to CGI a fight scene between two Omega-level mutants. I mean, just basically it drops them in a big wasteland and has cartoons over them. Less expensive than trying to, I mean, what would they even do? Like throw buildings, or how would they do that? How would you have the big fight scene? It's very hard to depict with characters that are depicted as being this powerful. That was a cool way to do it. If it was largely a money-saving thing, I'm all in favor, because it looked cool and it was a cool idea. I'd rather see lots of weirdness than something lame, and that looked really neat. Like I've watched that video, like just the opening sequence, like a dozen times now. As far as next season, I have no idea where they're going. This show has been a lot of, I don't know what they're doing next. Like, I just don't know what they're going to do next. And I hope Noah Hawley hasn't written himself into a corner. I get the impression it's not. He feels like someone who has a plan. And I am comfortable enough with this weird-ass show to follow Hawley on his crazy plan here. Noah, whatever his weird-ass plan with this show is. To be a good drama, action drama, something like this, like a fantasy, you have to have, even if you have stuff that's really, particularly if things are really weird, you need to have clear goals, like, this is what we're working towards. Otherwise, it just devolves into weirdness, which I'm less opposed to than perhaps I should be. But nonetheless, I want this show to survive, and it needs to have some sort of focus. And much as I love this season, it's had some great stuff in it, it does feel unfocused. The bad guy gets the thing and then doesn't really get punished, and just kind of is walking around free to do whatever he wants? Is this the bad guy wins? I mean, we've built up that he's the bad guy. We want to see something happen with him. I mean, does that all that happens, and he's just unleashed on the world? Is that it? That's not very satisfying for a superhero drama. Everyone turns on our main character, and then the bad guy goes free. Is not a great way to end it. That's a good cliffhanger, but I want some resolution here. No, I want this to go somewhere. I really do, because I love this show. But other than that, I'm really looking forward to seeing it again. I'm probably going to like marathon the whole damn thing, like find someone who hasn't seen the show at all. Just like, hey, you want to see something really strange? And I'll say that in a non-sexual way, and then, or maybe lead them on and show them this. And they'll be like, oh, that's not what I was expecting you to say. I don't know where I'm going with this. Okay, so those are my general thoughts, my one-off. Maybe I'll have some better analysis for this when I've processed this, but this is a very weird show. And I am in favor of weirdness. There isn't enough out there. Fargo, which Noah worked on, which the showrunner for this show worked on, was certainly strange. Twin Peaks, I guess. There's a... Well, Rick and Morty. Okay. I mean, this is actually... I take that back. I was going to say, there isn't enough weird stuff out there. No, this is a good time for weirdness. So, more of this. This is what I want. I'm just rambling at this point, so I'm just going to call it.